Adtech moves fast. Yesterday's innovation is today's warm-up act. Welcome to Legends of Adtech, the podcast where we go beyond the buzzwords and straight to the people at the cold face of digital adtech. Every 2 weeks, we sit down with the industry's boldest thinkers, pioneers and disruptors to find out how they're rewriting the game. This is their story.
You're listening to Legends of Adtech, and today's guest is someone who isn't just navigating the future of digital advertising, she's helping design it. I'm Julia Linehan, founder and CEO of The Digital Voice.
And I'm Casey Pass, your co-host, and I can't wait to dig into this one. In this series, we are speaking to 6 past winners of The Wire's AdTech Personality of the Year, people whose careers are as bold as their predictions. Today, we're joined by none other than Cadi Jones, SVP for Europe at Index Exchange. Cadi's path through AdTech is packed with milestones, from driving innovation at Clear Channel and scaling CTV and strategies at Pixability to shaping Index Exchange's European direction across video, streaming, and programmatic marketplaces. She is a true architect of change.
So in this episode, we've got an awful lot to pack in, and we'll be looking at the next few years ahead, what it could look like for programmatic, the shifts Cadi's seeing in the European market, and the kind of future she's hoping to build towards. And of course, we'll get a take on what's overhyped and what's quietly gaining ground. So, but enough from us. Cadi, welcome to Legends of Adtech.
Welcome.
Julia, Casey, I'm very happy to be here today. Thank you for having me.
Well, you might not say that when I kick off with your first challenge, Cadi, because I always challenge all our guests to, in 60 seconds or less, who you are, what you do, and what's your journey so far. Impossible challenge, but you've got this.
So it's the clock ticking.
Yeah.
I think probably the best place to start is how I fell into advertising, into digital advertising. I studied languages and absolutely loved it. As part of my course, I went to Paris for the year to work in a law firm. I thought it was going to be like an episode of Suits. I was going to be a paralegal. I was going to come back to London or back to the UK, do a conversion course and be a lawyer. When I got there, they were like, the brief is a bit different. You're going to build us an intranet site. And I'm like, what? And they're like, well, you can't do a course. This was very early days of the internet. I had to figure out how to code. Decided that I would try and, got back, didn't want to be a lawyer anymore, thought this internet thing was going to take off, and found my way into advertising, because at that point there were no ad servers, there was no ad tech, the ads were hard coded onto the page, and I basically got the job because if someone, a classified advertiser, phoned up the website and didn't like the way we put the ad, I could change the font or the text size and colour and all of that stuff. And then I've just been, I sort of fell into it through languages, but then I sort of fell in love with the fast pace and the changing nature of the ecosystem. There is always something new to learn in this industry. Am I out of time?
You're perfect. That was good. And I've known you years, and I did not know that you had techie skills. Go on, Cadi.
Oh, I'm not sure I do now. You definitely wouldn't want me to build the next Digital Voice website, Julia. But in 2000, I was all right.
So in all the years that you guys have known each other, that Julia's known you, you've been embedded in programmatic with some of this coding. Did you ever think, like, you set out when you got into it thinking, I'm going to be a legend in this field?
Absolutely. Does anyone ever say yes to that?
You'd be surprised.
I do.
Yeah. No, for me, look, it was really just a right time, right place entry into the industry. I joined Yahoo in 2008 to work, and I was working in search. Yahoo acquired Right Media at that point. They didn't know in Europe who to put it with, and so they just stuck it with the search team. And I went from running campaigns, hands on keyboard, what you'd call a trader now or an analyst, to actually then selling them. And then because I was used to using the tech, I moved into the ad tech side of it, so not just activation, but actually into understanding the technology that was powering that activation. And I think that's kind of what gave me my sort of ability to leapfrog. I think it's so powerful if you have actually been hands on keyboard, if you understand what it works, if you understand the pain that a trader goes through when you're talking about then what your tech can do, understanding it from the publisher perspective, and from the advertiser or agency perspective, from a hands-on keyboard angle, is just so powerful. It helps keep you grounded so that you can then, when you get the opportunity to influence and make a difference, you know what's really happening and not just the theory. Although it's been a little while since I've had to run a campaign.
It's the same. When I first started in digital advertising was in '96, and I could do ad serving and all of that because you had to do everything because there wasn't big teams then. And I still said all the time, I mean, I know a little about a lot rather than the other way around, but at least I've experienced and walked in their shoes, which I think is hugely important. And I'm actually curious though, because I think this links into something I wanted to ask you, because you've held major roles and major titles. So you think about, let me try and remember them all: CCO, co-founder, SVP, commercial director. And I think those roles, it's you need to know a lot about what that team's going through is one. But if there's any of those that stood out as being the most rewarding, or does it all come together?
I think for me it's really about building. And I think the title is somewhat irrelevant to some extent, as long as you're able to make things happen and get stuff done. And I think that's that's where in some roles I've been much more commercial, in other roles a little more operational, but ultimately it's about driving your business forward. And you do that by helping your customers and your partners to succeed and to thrive. And so I've always been in that sort of sales, commercially focused roles throughout all of the different titles, because ultimately the way you progress, the way you make a difference is by building that business and by building those partnerships through the industry and driving success for your customers. And so I think that if I had to sort of drive find a common thread, it would be around that sort of customer success piece. How do you get the right results, whether you're selling into a publisher or to an agency? Like, how do you help them see the results that they need to see to help their businesses grow?
I love that. So full circle. And thinking about, we've heard about your past experience and how you got into ad tech and the incredible roles that you've played such a pivotal part in. A lot of the time, some of those origins define your forward thinking, and for things like, wanting to build and focusing on that. You've been at companies right at the forefront of shaping the industry. Is there one thing you're most proud of that you feel like has had the biggest impact?
I think, and actually the thread that sort of goes through this is probably really around optimization and achieving those end goals. If I think about really early days in hands-on keyboard at Yahoo, using Right Media to deliver results, I was actually optimizing the campaigns themselves. I think when I then joined Beeswax, I was so excited by the idea of this sort of custom algo. Each advertiser needs to optimize their campaigns in the way that makes sense for them to drive their goals. Otherwise, all they're doing is enriching the platform's capability. They're not really understanding what is driving success for their business and what will bring the right results. And at Beeswax, we were doing that very much on the demand side, on the DSP. It's really interesting because now at Index Exchange, we've just enabled sell-side decisioning, effectively enabling partners to bring those same sort of custom algo technology to the supply side, and being able to do it at the full scale rather than at the inventory that's throttled by the time it reaches the DSP. And so I think that focus on optimization to delivering results is probably the thing that makes me tick and that I get most excited about.
So here's a question for you, because obviously this whole podcast is Legends of Adtech, and there's going to be people listening that are legends as well. There's going to be those that want to become a legend, and I'm curious as to whether you think or how important it is to do the following. Is it about speaking on being part of the network, the speaking circuit? Is it about having a voice there? Is it about what you've built within a company, or is it, like you've mentioned there, the clever tech that they're doing? Is it being part of the right company with the clever tech? Is it having the GARM in your name, or whatever? What is it?
I think this is a real like chicken and egg situation. It's really hard because ultimately, if you're not building anything within a company, if you're not doing anything interesting, whether that's, building results, building tech, then you're not, then sort of what are you speaking about? There's no point in being loud for the sake of being loud. But at the same time, if you're building and you're doing great work, unless you actually are out there talking about it and helping other people understand the opportunity that's there and like how they could also get involved, then you sort of, it's the, why bother really? So I think it's kind of that combination. You have to be doing really interesting work that's exciting enough to like get you out of bed in the morning and get you jazzed up about it. And then I think it's how do you communicate what you're doing? Because if there's one sort of criticism you could level at AdTech is we do like to make it sound way more complicated than it actually is. And so I think being able to take some of those really, really clever, interesting things that people are doing and explain that in plain English. I hate it when people say dumbing down because it's not dumbing down. Like if you're talking to brand marketers, I couldn't do 10% of their jobs. And so if they were explaining to me what their job is, I would hope that they would put it into plain English because there's bits of it that I'm not going to know about at all. But it's on us to not bamboozle the audience that we're talking to. So I think it's about building really cool things which make a real difference and then explaining what they're doing, perhaps not always so much the how. We like to talk about the pipes and how everything is connected, but I think there's a lot of value also in talking about why those things are important. And it's good to understand the plumbing of everything, but ultimately what you want is fast running water when you need it.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think this is why the whole aspiration behind why we launched AdTech Juice was however experienced, however many years you've been in this industry, it is still, there's a lot that's far too complicated. That's on us as to how we've done it. That education piece is important. And I would encourage people definitely to be that voice and say it simply. And for those learning, or for all of us to keep an eye on making sure you're learning all the time and using sites like AdTech Juice to get on the know-how. So important.
It really is, because it's look, there are bits of it that can be really, really hard, but ultimately it's only going to work if you bring people on that journey with you.
I think so. The only thing is, and this is an interesting one, is AdTech companies are the ones who are constantly being asked to pay to play. And that causes events. And that causes a challenge because then they're like, I've paid, so I'm going to be self-serving. So it kind of takes away really some of the impact that they're saying. There's actually really interesting topics. I would love to see, and I want your take on it, much more interesting topics, not self-serving, but ad tech companies getting their place on stage. I wonder what the secret is to landing a slot. How do you do it? And how can we convince the event organizers that ad tech has just as much of a voice as brands and agencies?
I mean, I think the reason that you want to hear from brands and agencies is that's where the money is coming from. And so I think the thing that I found really helpful is to firstly really know what you're talking about and be doing something that's really helping the industry. And by that, whether that's publishers, whether that's advertisers and agencies, or whether that's actually both. And then if you do make it on stage, make sure what you're saying is actually actionable. Make sure it's something that everyone in the audience can think, yeah, that is how I can use this in my day job. I think when I go to conferences and events, I go to learn, right? I go to hear what people are saying on stage, and the sessions I love the most are when I'm like, right, I can't take notes fast enough, and I can't wait to get back to the office and sort of put some of those things into practice. And so I think if you kind of flip that around and see it from the other perspective, well, when you're on stage, if you get the opportunity to be on stage, think about what you can share that will actually be valuable for the audience that's there on that day, and what you might share. The other week I was at the Future of Brands event, the MediaTel event, and I think thinking about how I'm positioning what I'm saying there to an audience of brands might be very different to what I might share. I mean, this was, you mentioned them, we're here this series with people who've won ATS's award. And so if I was speaking at ATS, the Exchange War event, I might speak in a lot more level of ad tech terminology and so on. So I think it's keeping it relevant for that audience and making it actionable is what will get you invited back.
Definitely. And shout out to the event organisers, though, that I think just please give ad tech companies a chance. They've got some interesting stuff to say. Someone's going to swear then. Interesting stuff to say.
Love it. And I love your point, Cadi, also about speaking when you're building something, speaking when you've got something interesting to say. It's so true. And ad tech has zero shortage of any of that going around.
And Casey, I think that's a really good point. It's that difference between speaking for the sake of speaking for noise versus speaking when you've got something interesting to talk about.
It's very true. And something that we hear a lot of our legends talk about that they love within our industry, and I know for me and Julie included, we find this as well, is the incredible community feel that it has. It really is very special and feels specific to advertising, but ad tech in particular. How important is it to you to lean into that? And what do you feel like you get out of that as well?
I think it's hugely important to lean into the community within the industry. There's certainly times in my career where I have really lent in very hard and hopefully helped a lot of people and given a lot back. But equally, there have been times where I've struggled from a personal perspective and I've had to lean on my network and on the various communities that exist through Digital Leading Ladies, through Bloom and other entities. And, it's almost like a piggy bank, right? It's a jar of coins. And for every coin you put in, like sometimes you might need to take a coin out. And I think that's sort of how I think about it. And I think one of the best things that sense of community gives is this sort of opportunity to constantly be learning. Obviously, well, not obviously, but now I'm much less hands-on keyboard than I was earlier in my career. And so one of the things I really value is spending time with folks who are earlier on in their career to understand what challenges they're facing, whether that's operationally or just sort of in the wider workplace. It helps me be a better leader for the team here at Index Exchange, and also just then for our customers, whether we're and how their teams are feeling and the challenges that they're facing.
It's fantastic. I love the idea of bringing new starters in the industry along for the journey and making sure they feel a part of the community as well. It's wonderful. Shifting gears slightly, we want to get into some hot takes and predictions from you because we know you are the one with finger on the pulse of everything ad tech wise. So we're curious to know, what are your predictions for ad tech for the next 12 months? Anything you've seen stand out that you'd share?
I think the biggest thing that I'm close to at the moment is this sort of shift towards sell-side decisioning. I mean, this is something that has come out and sort of evolved from this notion of curation that's been a hot topic for a little while. But if you think about the last 15 years or so of ad tech development, you had the SSPs who were sort of branded like the dumb pipes. We were plumbing in the industry, and the DSPs were the brains. They were doing all of the decisioning around targeting, around the value. They were deciding unilaterally like which piece of inventory was valuable and which wasn't. And because of that, they've been taking a big part of the fees, and really the only ones that have been driving innovation through programmatic. If you look certainly at the last 10 years, the bulk of that innovation has come from the demand side. I think what's really, really interesting now is that technology has advanced, right? So getting into the technical
Yes.
detail, right? You have as a consumer goes to a new website or starts streaming some TV content. Eventually, the publisher's ad server will send out a call to an SSP, and then the SSP packages that and sends out a bid request, which is what then the DSPs then respond to with their bid response. The DSPs have it takes around 10 milliseconds for the SSP to sort of prepare the bid request and get ready to send that package out to the DSPs. And the DSPs have like 200 milliseconds-ish in which they are deciding what they're adding. What's happened with the advancement in technology is everything has gets so much faster that now we're able to add any of those decisioning pieces that would have historically only be able to apply on the DSP side. You can apply them now to the sell side. And so the reason that I think this is the sort of biggest thing that's going to change the industry is, if you think of like the two sides of the industry, only one half has really been driving innovation and novelty through the whole of the last like 10, 15 years. I think the space we're at now is, now that we've realized that it's possible to do these things also on the supply side, we kind of able to double the opportunity for innovation and for building points of difference within the industry. And I think, so I think it's really going to drive a huge amount more innovation. I think the other piece that it really facilitates is getting advertisers and publishers much, much closer together. Because if you can do this sort of decisioning on the supply side closer to publishers, you can give publishers more information about what advertisers are looking for, what's working for each campaign. And so the publisher can build up that proximity to the brands. And I think that's really where, through my career, I've seen the magic happen. When you get a publisher and an advertiser together and talking about what needs to happen, what's driving success, that's where we really see things take off. And so I think this is going to be a really revolutionary change. And I'd love to come back and ask me about it in 12 months, because you'll see it.
We're going to have, yeah, we will. We'll hold you to that, because I'm also going to ask you something now then. And this will also be your prediction, and then we'll get you back next year and see if you're right. So acquisitions have been going off the charts so far this year. Based on what you've just said, are all eyes on the sell side for the who's next in acquisitions? Is that where the focus is going to be? Because there's more innovation, more tech coming out of that.
If there is one thing I have learned in my career,
never predict,
is that this industry is unpredictable, and I am not going to be making predictions around acquisitions. But yeah, I do think more consolidation on the supply side, I think, would seem to make sense, and more proliferation on the demand side as this as this change starts to take hold.
I love that. And based on that, and specific to programmatic trading, are you thinking that's going to be more buoyant or more flat?
Way more buoyant, right?
Good.
I think the thing that's interesting is that the pace of change is never going to be as slow as it is now, and it feels like we're moving at the speed of light, compared to where we were 5 years ago even. And I think that's the thing that is really hard for us to get our heads around, just how fast and how much opportunity there is still to accelerate. And I think that drives more ad tech development, innovation, and best practice.
On that note then, as a final one before we head into our rapid fire round, it's clear you're thinking that we haven't necessarily reached a peak yet of ad tech development. Do you think we ever will? And how different do you see ad tech being 5 years from now, if we were to come back and have another Legends of Adtech that far off from now?
I'll be close to retirement by then.
Don't do it, Julia. We'll miss you too much. You have to say it. No, it's no, I think we're really just beginning. It's when you thinking about this change that adding this additional layer of decisioning can make. We've only really in the last 6 months had this realization that we can double double the innovation that's going on in the industry. I think the best is yet to come.
Exciting.
Well, good for that, because I think you're right, and I think we're going to see it. And there is no way of predicting, however much we love to predict, but we'll keep doing it anyway. Now, as Casey alluded to, it's my infamous quickfire round. So, Cadi, are you ready?
Fingers on the buzzers.
Let's do this. What's the one ad tech concept that still stumps you?
Do you know, I've never worked in ad serving. You mentioned that you had.
Yeah.
And I think it's at the heart of everything we do. It's a space where I think we're going to see a lot of innovation now in the results of some of the changes that are coming out of the anti-competitive stuff. I think that's one where I'd love to up my knowledge further.
I think as well, also shout out to the unsung heroes on the ops side. They don't get enough kudos, and kudos from me, and I know from you, Cadi.
100%.
So what piece of ad tech doesn't exist yet, but should?
Reporting that is so compelling that you drop everything to open it. The number of reports that are sent out and no one opens, it's just depressing.
I know. Maybe there should be an audio form or have done some music just to jazz them up so you'd actually listen or watch them or read them.
Movie trailer style.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's what we should do it in.
Explosions.
This week you will have seen. Yeah, something very dramatic and over the top would be ideal.
So the next question is, what's the biggest issue in ad tech right now?
I think it has been this sort of stifling of innovation in the sell side, this perception that as an SSP we're just pipes. And I think that is changing and changing really fast, but it can't continue.
So next question, who's a person in the industry you think more people should know about? Who is that unsung hero?
Well, we've just said it, but calling out all of the ad ops folks everywhere.
Yeah.
But actually, to touch back on an earlier question, we talked about the power of community and how those support networks can really help you learn and grow in your career, and when you have a hard time, having people to talk to about it. I'd love to call out, rather than a single person, but the team behind AdTech Connect. So that's Anya, Jack, Rishan, and Sean. I think they're doing a great thing that I wish had existed 10 years ago. I know, I remember back to some of those early digital advertising women's network, the Dawn events, and I think they're doing that, but for the whole industry, and I love it. Love to see it.
I was a committee member on Digital Advertising Women's Network Dawn, and I loved what they do. And I think the same. We're doing events with Sean and team as well, because I think it's a great thing. I always laugh because I can't get into AdTech Connect because I'm the wrong demographic, but I'm proud that there exists for the future generation. Talking about the future, the most futuristic thing you've seen in the last year, aside from sell-side deterministic programming, what else?
Can I just generally go, the rise of agents and AI in general? I think if I think back 2 years ago, it wasn't really a thing, and now I don't know that there's anyone in the industry who doesn't use it to their advantage. And so I think just whether it's images, whether it's text, I think just the quality and the speed that it's improving is incredible.
Definitely. We're seeing it with AI and social agents with some of our clients. So I'm 100% with you on that. Final one, who's your ad tech legend, and who would you love to see on Legends of Adtech in the future?
I absolutely love Dora Mikhail.
And
I think
Dora,
she's a real legend. She was in at the very, very early days. If you get her on, you've got to ask her about Ask Jeeves. Back in the day.
Ooh. That's going back some. I was on UK Plus at the time of Ask Jeeves, which is really good.
And she's now in the space which is growing really fast around gaming, and I think so I think she's always been at that sort of cutting edge of ad tech. I think she'd be a great legend to have on.
Exciting.
Dora, we're coming for you. That's been fantastic. And I'm just going to call out a few things that you said just to finish. I think one thing to keep all eyes on sell-side innovation, especially around decisioning, lean into your communities and then give back, and especially the rising stars and the future generation. Help, mentor, do as much as you can. They are our future, and the more we feed into them, the stronger we're going to be. And the final one that I took away from you, Cadi, is that kiss it, which is keep it short and simple. AdTech, stop overcomplicating it, quit with the anagrams, and no,
The TLAs, the three-letter acronyms.
Thank you. Quit with the acronyms and there will be a lot smoother sailing going forward, which has been amazing. So thank you so much. That's just my recap.
Oh, I love it. There's so many good stuff, so much good stuff in there. Thank you so much for joining us today, Cadi. That is a wrap on this episode of Legends of Adtech, but be sure to check out the description for ways to connect with Cadi and subscribe to never miss an episode.
Cadi, you've absolutely been a star today. You're, of course, a real industry legend. So thank you for sharing your story, your insights. And if you're wondering what just happened or what's happening in AdTech, head over to our brand new website, adtechjuice.com, for the juiciest industry takes and a knowledge refresh to help you decode our industry.
And if you loved today's conversation, please don't forget to rate, review, and even share this episode. It helps us keep the AdTech wisdom flowing, and hit that follow button so you don't miss a single legend. Until next time, keep it juicy.
You've been listening to Legends of Adtech, a podcast by Adtech Juice. New episodes drop every 2 weeks, bringing you closer to the pioneers, disruptors, and game changers shaping the future of digital advertising. Stay connected at adtechjuice.com and be sure to follow us on LinkedIn for even more industry know-how.